Good afternoon, everyone. I'm calling to order the meeting of the Town Regional School District Planning Board at 5:32 p.m. The meeting is being recorded. Going to take roll call attendance. Charlie?
Present.
I'm here. Carl?
Yes.
George?
Present.
Tom? No Tom. Jim?
Present.
Deb?
Here.
Peter? Peter, you're here?
Yes, I am.
Great. Steve?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Kim? No Kim. Susan?
Here.
Kara?
Here.
Nancy?
Here.
Colin?
Here.
Nadine?
Here.
Bonnie?
Here.
Michael?
Here.
Patrick? No Patrick. Bill?
Here.
Marie?
Here.
Andy? I thought I saw Andy. Oh, there you
Here.
are.
I'm
Great.
here.
And Sarah? No Sarah? Okay. We have a quorum. We don't have draft minutes for you. They're not done yet, so we'll get those to you at the next meeting. Public comments. Let's see what we've got. Any public comments to begin the meeting? I don't see any hands, so we'll move to project manager chair update. Jake?
That was really fast. I was barely prepared.
You want me to do it again?
No, it's okay. It happened way too fast. Usually I get like 15 minutes. Yeah, just I have two quick updates. One is one important update, our budget update. So we are just about out of money. It's really the short of it. We will run out of money in September, and we will not finish the month. I was originally projecting us through September, and our intention is to operate through October. So it looks like we have around, to get through October, around a $13,000 deficit, and we will be closing that gap with a contribution from Burke 12. So that's the quick story, is we will have exhausted the community compact grant remaining town funds by the middle of September, and we will backfill the balance of September and October with Burke 12 funds, and that gets us theoretically and hopefully to the town vote. Are there any questions?
Jake, this is Peter. I just want to acknowledge the important contribution that Burke 12 has made to get us to the hopefully an important milestone here. So thank you to the board and to your advocacy within the organization to bring those additional resources to the table.
You're welcome. If anyone's interested, we have a board meeting at 9 o'clock on Saturday morning. If you want to come, you're always welcome. The meetings are posted on our website, burke12.org. The second update is just, I believe that everyone is aware that we are working on in finishing up the planning and logistics for a joint select board meeting on August 28th, which is a week from, which is this coming Monday. It's 6 o'clock at the Sheffield Senior Center. And I appreciate everyone who was a part of this somewhat ambitious planning process to bring everyone together, everyone from Nadine, who helped secure the space, to our various board representatives who were able to sort of organize and reorganize meetings to make this happen. I also want to thank Stacy Schultz, who I believe is on the call, and Mary Nash, who helped with a lot of logistics. So We posted the agenda for the meeting today. And the agenda will include a presentation by Lucy and myself on the merger recommendation, sort of the context of the board, an outline of sort of the key features of the regional agreement, a bit around the financial modeling, because that's obviously one of the more complicated elements, and then our targeted timeline. After that presentation, we'll obviously be having an exchange, questions and responses from between us and the various members. The meeting will be Zoom. The Zoom link is on the posting, which is now up live on our website. And thanks, Amanda, for getting that done so quickly. Did I not thank anyone? I'm sure we've had this has been a team effort, and I just want to acknowledge that. Any questions?
So just to add to the joint select board meeting agenda item, this really is a meeting of the 8 town select boards and finance committees, and an opportunity for them to ask Jake and me whatever questions they have, get whatever clarifications they need. We are posting it as an RSDPB and subcommittee meeting only in the event we happen to have present at the meeting a quorum of any of those groups. It's not our typical board meeting. We're not expecting everyone to be present. You're obviously welcome to be present, but it's not required. And it really is an opportunity for the select boards and finance committees to speak with each other about this initiative and our recommendations. So just wanted to make clear that that's why you didn't get a doodle poll about it. This isn't a meeting at which we're going to be taking any action, right? This is an informational meeting for the select boards and the finance committees. Nancy?
Is this just for the select board, members of the select board to be asking questions? Sorry, I've been out of the loop because of family emergency. Is this just for the select board to be asking questions, or is this open to public for public answer or public questions as well?
No, this is going to be for select boards and finance committee members to ask questions, and then time permitting,
Okay.
there will be a public comment period at the end of the meeting.
And what time?
6,
6 p.m.
Jake? Yeah,
6 o'clock.
yeah.
So yeah, it's posted as 6 to 8. But you know, I'm sure if we need to go beyond that, we'll go beyond that. And just to reinforce a point, this is not the only meeting. In the last meeting, we were with the Egremont Select Board. This morning, we were thankful for that opportunity, and we continue to offer ourselves up to follow up with individual boards, and we intend to obviously do lots more community outreach forums too, prior to any potential town vote.
Right, more about that when we get to
Sorry.
no, that's fine, when we get to the community outreach subcommittee report. But yes, there will be public forums, Nancy, coming up that will be designed primarily to present to the public and respond to any questions public participants might have. All right, so on to 8-town regional agreement. We circulated to you last week revised draft, the 8/16/2023 draft, which shows the changes from the last draft we considered at our last meeting and voted on at our last meeting. So I'm gonna walk you through the more significant of those changes. None of them is really substantive, but I'm gonna walk you through the more significant of those. And if there are any that I skip over because I think they're just language clarifications and not worthy of discussion, but you want to talk about them, we'll go back to them after I walk through the more significant of the changes. So first, Desi asked, and all of these changes, by the way, come from suggestions made by Desi that we make to the agreement. So for example, they suggested for ease of cross-referencing, we have at the end a listing of all the defined terms, including the terms that are defined earlier in the agreement, just so that if you see a defined term in the agreement, you don't have to search through the agreement to find the definition. You can just go to the end of the document and find the definition there. So terms will actually be defined in two places in the agreement. In section 3B, Desi suggested that we move a couple of things around. We had a paragraph for assigning students that related specifically to special programming. And Desi suggested that we just move that up into the preamble and say that students will attend the school in closest proximity required by law and school committee policy and as appropriate to the grade level or program needed. And by including that language, we get rid of the need for paragraph 2. And they also asked that we include something that I think everyone understands and is implied in every agreement, but they want specific language in here that in the event of an emergency, like a fire in a building or something like that, the superintendent would be permitted to assign students to different school buildings to address the emergency situation. So that's 3B2 now. Moving to section 4B, a couple of additions, again, requested by Desi. I think at the last meeting, we explained that we're going to need special legislation that permits the 2 existing districts to convey into the new district title to the buildings and land that the districts own. There is surprisingly no provision in the law that allows that currently. So we need some special legislation that expressly permits that. And Desi asked that we put that language into the agreement at this place in section 4B. So that's what we did there. And they also asked that we include explicitly what is implicit, which is that with respect to the school buildings that the district won't own, so that would be the New Marlboro and Egremont School, we need to have a written lease. I mean, that's the law currently. There needs to be a written lease. I understand that no one can put their hands on a written lease for the Egremont and New Marlboro schools with the Southern Berkshire Regional School District currently, but the law does require that there be a written lease. So there's just language in there now that says the commencing on the operational date, right, which is the date when we go live with the new district. It's going to be July 1, 2026, assuming the special legislation gets passed that allows us to extend out that transition period. As of that date, there'll be leases with the town of Egremont, the town of New Marlboro, that allows the district to have general charge and superintendents over the leased buildings, which is required by law. Okay, moving to,
Can I ask a question?
yes, sorry, Don, go ahead.
Does our agreement cover possible income from the rental of portions of Mount Everett High School?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's the next paragraph that I was going to come to.
Sorry.
So, no, that's fine. yes, it does cover it. That's in section. Wait, where are we? For really in 4F5. But the way it works under this statutory provision that Desi asked us to include, which is Mass General Law, Chapter 71, Section 16R, is districts are permitted to rent out excess space to public or private profit-making businesses or nonprofit organizations. That's specifically provided for in this section of Chapter 71. And then there's a specific way that the money that you get from that rental needs to be accounted for. And that's why Desi asked that we make a specific reference to Chapter 71, Section 16R in this paragraph. And what that statute says is that the monies received from any rental or lease shall be kept separate and apart from other funds in the district treasury by the district treasurer, and that the principal and interest from that may be expended without further appropriation by the school committee for the upkeep of the facility in which the surplus space is located. But if at the end of the year, there's a balance left after spending the money on that upkeep, the balance goes into the excess and deficiency fund. So that's the reason for the addition of that statutory reference in paragraph 5. In section 5 under budget, Desi asked that we specifically call out separately operating costs, capital costs, and transportation costs. So we've done that. And this sort of ties into the more significant, additional language on page 19. And this language may change yet. I want to make clear that we're still in discussions with Desi. And it's likely that we're going to have some additional revisions to this iteration of the agreement, which is why I'm not going to call for a vote on this agreement tonight. The changes that are here are really non-substantive, and there are going to be additional changes. I don't think the additional changes are going to be substantive either, but there may be a lot of additional language because Desi wants us to keep very clean in the language that we have these separate buckets, that we have operating costs, that we have capital costs, including capital costs that are debt related and non-debt capital costs, and transportation costs. And you may recall that when we were talking about the safety valve and the operation of the safety valve, we put together in a single bucket operating costs, transportation costs, and non-debt capital costs. So we put it all together because, of course, money is fungible, right? So all of those dollars are going to have to get assessed, and for purposes of calculating the safety valve, the CAT, we put them all together. We may have to tease out in the language of this agreement the calculation of each of those things separately. It's not going to change the economics. It's just going to change the language. It's going to make the agreement longer. But we do not believe it's going to have any change to the economics of the safety valve. But this new language on paragraph 19 gets to the concept, gets to what it is DESE's worried about. And that is that we have a statutory method of assessment that ensures that no town, whether we're applying the safety valve or not, is going to be paying less than its required local contribution. That's the fundamental issue for DESE, that no town will be paying less than its required local contribution. They also have a concern that no town will be paying 0 for transportation costs and 0 for non-debt capital costs. So they want every town to be paying some share of that. And as I said, we've come up with language that addresses those concerns, that based on the runs Matt has done and Jake has reviewed, does not change the economics of our methodology. It's just a different way of expressing it. That's not in this draft. It will be in the next draft if DESE continues to press on that issue and want that teasing out of transportation and non-debt capital. But the concept is here. The concept is we need to have a system that makes it very clear that we're in accordance with the statutory method, and each town will be paying no less than its required local contribution. I'm sure you all remember from the graph Jake presented many months ago that all of us are paying significantly above the required local contribution, which is why we think this is a non-issue for us, right? If we were right at the required local contribution, then maybe that would change the economics, right? But we're not. All of the towns are paying above the required local contribution. As a group, we're paying significantly above required local contribution. And so you'd really have to have an enormous spike in the required local contribution for this requirement to take anyone out of where they would otherwise be with the application of the safety valve. Jake, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I think you did a great job. The only thing I would add is that the reason that DESE is pressing on this is that we are trying to present an agreement that meets the regulatory methodology. We could write an alternative methodology in our regional agreement. It would require a different approval process, an annual approval process at the town level and at the commissioner level. And none of us think that that makes any sense at all. I think we've discussed this in previous meetings. And so we're working really hard to meet the regulatory definitions to ensure that we stay within the regulatory pathway and are not considered, it's not considered an alternative methodology. And so that's why we're working really hard to meet the spirit of their requests around the differentiation in the 3 buckets and the assurances that no one ever drops below required local, which I think is, it's an impossible scenario given the amount that we spend over, that you all spend over.
Matt, do you have anything to add at this point?
No, you've covered it well.
Okay, thank you. Okay, page 22, B1. DESE asked us to state explicitly what is already implicit in both of our district agreements and that is that if a member chooses to withdraw from the district, they don't get a share of the assets of the district. They leave the district with whatever remaining obligation they may have on debt, but they don't get to divide up the value of the assets in the district if they choose to withdraw. All right, page 25. This was just a catch by Desi, a good catch, which was that we hadn't revised this paragraph, this introductory paragraph, to account for the fact that we want to extend the transition period out another year if we get special legislation that permits that, or alternatively, if we get a waiver by DESI of the regulation that says we can't extend it. And you may recall at the last meeting, I said that DESI said it'd be much easier to get special legislation than to get a waiver of the regulation, because in order to get a waiver of the regulation, there needs to be a new regulation passed that permits DESI to waive the regulation. So it's easier just to go with the special legislation. But DESI said, but it is possible that we could get a new regulation that permits us to waive the existing regulation. So why don't you put that in there too as a possibility, even if it's unlikely. So we did what they asked. We put that in as a possibility, even though it's unlikely. The other changes, really the substantive, none of them are substantive, but the language changes that are more significant are in section 15, where we've incorporated what we voted on at our last planning board meeting, which is to have this extended transition period that goes through June 30, 2026, assuming we get the special legislation or a waiver of the regulation. But it also provides that if we don't get that, and we agreed on this at our last meeting, if we don't get that extension, we're not going to crater this whole thing because the legislation doesn't pass on that issue. We're going to have a transition period that ends June 30, 2025. Again, it's very likely, or it seems likely, that we would get, assuming that the towns vote in favor of this merger, right? We're not going to go forward with a special legislation unless there's a positive vote on the merger in October or whenever that vote happens. But assuming we get that positive vote, people think it likely that we'll get an extension of the transition period. So that's 15B. And then we have in 15D a paragraph about the special legislation, which we talked about last time. So the special legislation that we absolutely will need, that will be a condition for our forming this new district, is special legislation that authorizes the transfer of the school buildings and property from the two existing districts into the new district. And if for some crazy reason that special legislation doesn't pass, then the district can't form. And so the agreement would terminate and the new district would dissolve. So Nancy's hand was up first and then Don. Nancy, you're muted.
Applied in the section regarding the vote being run by all the towns. Is it that implied that the agreement will not pass if one town goes against it, or has that been taken off the table?
So the answer to that question is that in order to have an 8-town agreement,
It needs 8 towns.
you need 8 towns to vote in favor. So, yeah, I mean, that's the simple answer. And if only 7 towns voted in favor, we'd have to go back to the drawing board and see if people have had the appetite to think about a 7-town district.
Math's never been my strong point.
Yeah. Don?
Paragraph 15A,
Yeah,
the second line. Don't you need it, the word in before voters? A majority of, I mean, after voters, a majority of voters in the towns of.
thank you, Judge. You're
Welcome.
correct. Any other questions? Okay, as I said, until we've gotten final sign off from Desi, I don't think there's any need to vote on these primarily stylistic and clarification changes. We'll come back to you with the next iteration of the agreement before our next meeting. I did just want to mention that we do have draft special legislation that we're going to be sending to Desi that takes care of these issues. And it includes something that Desi suggested be included in the special legislation. I don't know that it's required, but there's certainly no harm in including it. And that's a provision that says that in addition to being permitted to convey title to real property to the new district, the existing districts will also be assigning to the new district, and the new district will be assuming all of the assets, not just real property assets, but all of the assets of the existing districts and all of the liabilities of the existing districts, just as is the case in any other merger. So when 2 companies merge together into a new company, you have the assignment of the assets and the assumption of liabilities by the new district. And so that language is going to be in the new special legislation, just so that there can never be a question about that in the future. Again, I'm not sure it's required, but Desi suggested we include it, thought it would be a good idea, and we're going to include it. And then we're going to have the transition language as well that we've already discussed.
Lucy, is it safe to assume that that would have an exception for the debt on Mount Everett that is not part of this? Or is that?
No, because it is going to be assumed by the new district, but the methodology that the new district will be using to apportion that debt out to the towns is as we've agreed and is as provided in the regional agreement. So in terms of who's writing the checks, you're right. It's just going to be those 5 towns, but it is an obligation that is going to be assumed by the new district because the old districts are going away. As of the operational date, those new districts dissolve. As of July 1, 2026, those districts go away, those school committees go away, and that's why everything has to be assigned into the new district. How it gets paid for is determined by the regional agreement, and under our agreement, that legacy debt is paid for by the 5 Southern Berkshire towns.
Understood.
Okay, a couple words about the warrant. So at the 8 town meetings, the voters will have before them a town warrant with an article that will ask them to approve the merger, simplifying it according to the terms of the eight-town regional agreement. And so Desi has asked that we draft that warrant language, which we've done preliminarily, that we also draft a summary that will go with that warrant article that describes the steps, right? What does it mean if I vote in favor, right? It means you've voted to accept this agreement, but that doesn't necessarily mean that a new district is going to become operational on July 1, 2026. So this summary document is going to describe the conditions, right? The conditions for the new district becoming operational, including passage of this special legislation we've been talking about, and passage or approval of the debt required to construct the new high school. So that debt approval contingency. So that's all going to be laid out in a very easy to understand paragraph or two that will be attached to the warrant. It won't be part of the warrant article, but it will be there explaining in very simple English what the steps are before this new district could become operational. And what Desi has asked is, after they review that proposed warrant language and summary, that we get town council of all the 8 towns together, that we forward that warrant language to them, together with the current iteration of the regional agreement and the summary of steps, and that we get everyone together to make sure all of town council are comfortable with the warrant language. We do it sort of as a group, which makes a lot of sense. And there's some towns that share town council, which will make this a little easier and less expensive. But they feel very strongly that we should get town council sign off on the warrant language as soon as we can. So that's definitely in the works. Don?
Yeah, Lucy, will that warrant specifically advise the voter that the agreement itself is posted online and can be read?
Well, there's very specific language in the relevant statute about how this warrant should read. So what we did was take that language and put it into the warrant article, but leading, and what that language says is that the regional agreement is on file with the select boards of the respective towns. It doesn't say the regional agreement is attached to the warrant, and that would be a lot of paper, probably a lot of wasted paper, to print out copies of those regional agreements for everyone who attends these special town meetings. But certainly we will be pounding in the weeks preceding the vote that the regional agreement is on the website, available for review, and also will be available for review in the town offices.
Well, I think the warrant ought to say that specifically.
Okay, well, we can talk to town council about whether they want to include that. I don't have any objection to that, but there is very specific language in the statute that you refer to the regional agreement being on file with the select board. So I'm agnostic on that, Don. I just don't want to put anything in the warrant article that's going to rock the boat with town council. And the more we stray from the statutory language, the higher the risk of that is. Bonnie?
Apropos what Don just said, will you be going over all of this on the 28th with the select boards?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm not going to go through the provisions of the agreement we just.
No.
reviewed.
It's the
But-
procedural
Yes.
going forward in terms of the warrant, and I know some towns have already spoken about, it costs everybody money to have a special town meeting. They're putting other items on their warrant.
Yeah, that's up to each town.
No, I know that, but I just want to be sure on the 28th, you're going through the procedural
Yeah.
related to the warrant item you've drawn up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that we can get some draft language out to the towns later this week that they could send off to their respective town council, and that maybe we could get a call scheduled for next week.
Thank you. A lot of work.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the warrant language reviewed by town council. Next step, so we need another meeting, obviously. We need another meeting to review what I hope will be the final iteration of this regional agreement. And together with our recommendation, the statute requires us to submit a report to the select board. And so what Jake and I have discussed, and I want to preview this with you, we don't have a report for you to review today, but I don't think it makes sense to create a lot of additional language. We've written so many things. There's so many things that are already posted that I think what makes sense is that we take the things that we've already prepared, and we're going to get to the new briefs we have on enrollment, educational opportunities and choices, transportation. What am I missing, Jake? Education, enrollment, transportation, finance, and sort of fast facts. We have 5 briefs, and we're going to put them all together. And that's pretty much going to be our report. So it's not going to be new content. There'll be references to all of the research reports that are relevant to the recommendation embedded in the report, but we're not going to repeat all of that. We're going to summarize it. And so that will be coming to you at the next meeting as well. Jake, anything more on that?
No, I don't think so. No, I think you covered it. Thanks.
Okay, and then in terms of the town vote, we're still targeting October 23rd. But it's not entirely within our control, of course. So we need final DESI sign off before we can send the recommendation and the regional agreement to the towns. By the way, no town has to take 30 days from when we send that recommendation and report to before the special town meeting, but they can't take more than 30 days under the statute. We want to give 30 days, but if we miss it by a day or two, the town could still go forward with a special town meeting that's scheduled for October 23rd, even if the recommendation doesn't arrive until, I don't know, September 25th. But our plan is to have our next meeting, take our final vote on the regional agreement and the report of our recommendation at the next meeting, mid-September, so we can get that off to the towns before the 23rd of September. That's our plan.
Before the 23rd of September?
Yes, so they have 30 days.
Oh, okay. That's all right. Got it.
the wrinkle here, and Nadine has identified it, is whether there's gonna be space for all of the towns to hold their special town meetings on the same day. And we're still working through that question. Okay, so, oh, George, yep,
Thank you, Lucy. While you're working through that question of space,
yeah,
I think it's also important to work through the question of parking. I'm thinking in particular Mount Everett that Bakermont frequently uses for annual and special town meetings. And if other towns are using it at the same time, that's a concern that our select board has raised among
okay.
ourselves.
So when I went to your last annual town meeting, that was at Jug End, is that not a possibility?
That was at Catamount.
A Catamount, I'm sorry.
Yes. Oh, I wish.
Yeah, Jug End, that really dates me. It really dates me. I used to frequent Jug End.
Well,
Yeah,
you can still hike there.
yeah, I can still hike there, but I can't do the other things. So is Catamount still a possibility for Egremont?
It is a possibility. We've got some lighting issues in the evening
Oh,
we have to deal with.
okay. Okay, well, yeah, select board members, please bring to Jake your ideas and concerns and worries and solutions as soon as you have them, so that we can work through all this stuff. It's a lot of
Yeah.
logistics to organize.
Just the other thing that I did want to mention, the other, I can't remember who raised this, but if we are to have a special town meeting on the same day, which is obviously the goal, that if presentations were required that involved either Lucy and I, we can only be at so many places. So the idea of supporting information to the towns in the meetings is something we can work with you all on, and with the select boards on, to ensure that folks have information that might be necessary for an introduction to the topic. Nadine has her hand up.
Nadine?
Yeah, my hope, of course, is that we'll do enough advanced community meetings that people won't be looking for, an hour-long presentation and discussion, but more of a synopsis that certainly I feel I could make on behalf of the Regional Planning Board for Sheffield. And then open the floor for discussion based on that. But that's my hope, is that we have enough community participation that town meeting will end up being an opportunity to, have a brief discussion and then a vote. I'm hopeful.
Okay. So that sort of leads naturally to the community outreach subcommittee report. So one of the things we're going to be talking about on Friday is what those community forums will look like, where they'll be held, how many we're going to have, how we're going to set those up. Those are going to be happening in September and October, early October, I would think. One thing that we talked about at our last community outreach meeting was actually the need for there to be, or the desirability and need, I think, for there to be people who are really comfortable fielding questions about educational benefits, fiscal benefits, reasons we made the decisions we made, all those questions we get over and over, that there be people who feel comfortable and are prepared to answer those questions. Other than Jake and me, we're happy to answer them, but we can't be everywhere. And so I think there's a lot of talent on this board, and especially for those who've been at this for 3.5 years, you've got an incredible knowledge base. And I think we should take advantage of that. And so I'm sort of asking for those who might be interested in being ambassadors and spokespeople for the recommendation to let Jake know, let me know. And we can pull materials together for you and help you in any way we can get prepared for those meetings and discussions. Jake and I have been fielding those questions for what, 2 years now, Jake?
Yeah.
And so we've had a lot of practice. That doesn't mean we're great at it, but we certainly have had a lot of practice. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. So yeah, we're just asking for others who are interested to let us know and step forward and participate in whatever way you can. John?
Yeah, I'm the community outreach meetings, are they going to be town specific? A, in the sense of their location, and B, are there going to be expectations from residents of particular towns if they're town oriented rather than new district-wide oriented, that folks speaking on behalf of the proposal will be from those towns? Or are people going to be open to hearing from board members from other towns speak at what might be viewed as their town's community outreach meeting?
Yeah, good questions all, and that's going to be the subject of discussion on Friday. I certainly hope that people will be open to hearing from folks in all towns, but whether we're going to have meetings that are located in each of the 8 towns, I don't know. I mean, I think that's really going to be difficult to schedule, but I do think that if we have, for example, a meeting in Monterey, it'd be great if you and Don were available to speak in favor or in support of the vote that you took last month. So certainly hoping.
What do you think? I'm sorry, what do you think about larger forums? Like if you had one in the Monument Auditorium and one in the Mount Everett Auditorium, where you could have people from any town? I mean, isn't that also a possibility?
Yeah. And that may end up being what we do.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but feel free to attend on Friday, or send Jake your thoughts on what approach you think is best before Fridays, because I think that's all on the table for discussion.
Great. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Colin?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to the sort of question that John just raised, because I think on one hand, it does make sense for the voters to hear from people from their towns, because there's going to be a level of trust they have in them to know that they were looking out for them. But on the other hand, we've all been saying, as we've been going through these meetings, that we're 8 towns, and we've been looking at this as 8 towns together, not as this district versus that district and all of that. And so I just hope whatever decision is made, those two things are balanced, because both of them are important to me. I you know, I think if I were a voter from Sheffield and didn't know what was going on, I definitely want my representatives there, but I'd also like to hear from other people too. And I'm happy to attend if it ends up being that we're going to have these at different towns. I'm happy to attend as many as I can just to be there and answer any questions. But I would hope that the representatives from the towns other than Sheffield are there too. So
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think that's the balance we're trying to strike in setting up these community forums.
thank you.
Okay, we do actually have one thing to vote on today. And that is that Susan Smith has very graciously agreed to become a more formal member of our community outreach subcommittee. She has been a constant member or attendee at all of our community outreach meetings, so much so that I often forget that she is not a member of the community outreach subcommittee, and I often call on her to vote, and she has to remind me that she's not a member. So especially because it's very important that community outreach be meeting a lot in the next couple of months. I mean, right now we're meeting every 2 weeks, but we may, I think we're actually meeting every week, right? Jake, we had a meeting last Friday and we're meeting this Friday. So it's really important that we are able to have those meetings and make decisions and have a quorum at our community outreach meetings. So by adding Susan as an alternate, we then increase the chances that we will have a quorum at these meetings and have as much input, especially from Susan and her valuable input, as possible. So I would ask for a motion to make Susan Smith an alternate member of the community outreach subcommittee.
I make that motion.
I'll second it. Thank you, Tara. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'm gonna call for a roll call vote. Charlie?
Yes.
Carl?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Jim?
Abstain.
Deb?
Yes.
Peter? Taylor?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Kim hasn't joined, right? Okay, Susan?
here.
Oh, Kim?
I abstain.
Susan?
Yes.
Tara?
Yes.
Nancy? Nancy?
Yes.
Thank you. Colin?
Yes.
Nadine?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Bonnie? Bonnie? Bonnie, you're muted.
Yes.
Thank
yes.
you. Thanks. Michael?
Yes.
Patrick? Patrick? Thank you.
Yep.
Bill?
Yes.
Marie?
Yes.
Andy?
Hi.
Sarah's not here. Okay, and I'm in favor. Thank you all. Anything more, Jake, on community outreach?
Just real quickly.
Oh, the website, yes,
Website, yeah.
that's a biggie.
Kind of a big deal.
Yeah, we have a refreshed website that's up, and it's great. It's streamlined, it's clean, it gets you right to these fact briefs. It has all the other information still available, but the landing page looks great. And I think will allow people to get to the sort of heart of the matter a lot easier and quicker. So that's my introduction, but Jake, you can tease it out.
Yeah, I think you pretty much hit it on the head. This went live yesterday. Appreciate the work that our two consultants, Christina and Stacy, have put into this, and actually incredible amount of feedback from the community outreach subcommittee and their thoughts on getting the content. Keep in mind that the change really is to the landing page. So the rest of the website has pretty much stayed the same. But we wanted to make sure when people landed that they could navigate quickly to some of the more commonly asked questions and information. Also on the front page is a quick sign up that we wanted to put front and center because Stacy and Christine will be producing, and as the board has been doing, updates, but probably more regular updates that we can do email blasts, newsletters, things of that sort. So we're going to hopefully collect more names and continue to circulate information to folks who are looking for it. We are looking for ongoing quotations and thoughts, endorsements that we can put on the little streaming thing there. I'm sure that's got a name. What's it called? A Chiron or something like that.
Right.
Right. So if you have something, I prefer that I'm not up there and that you are all up there. So feel free to, Stacy's going to be reaching out to members of the community outreach to start getting some of that information. And then the last thing I wanted to say, which is important, is the financial facts button and the education buttons are the two longest briefs. The financial facts button at the end of it has a list of the 8 towns. We are finishing up a 2-page financial snapshot of the implications for each town. So this was requested because it's hard to tease through Matt's worksheets and know necessarily how that affects your town. So we've captured the town data in a selected way on these 2-page sheets. We actually shared the first draft of this with the Egremont Select Board this morning. Matt has reviewed them. I've got a few little adjustments to make, and we're hoping to get these live by Friday. So you'll be able to click on those. Definitely will be ready for Monday night. You can see information that's specific to your town, how the merger and no merger compares out, how it impacts capital costs around the new high school. People asked, how does it affect my taxes? How will new high school affect my taxes? And so we've done some estimations based on that. And I want to thank a few people who helped me to think through this. John was one early on in sort of trying to tackle, this complicated task of translating it. But I think we've done a good job, and hopefully it'll be useful as each of the towns considers the fiscal impact. Beyond obviously the stronger arguments, which in my opinion are really the educational proposition that we're making. So that's it.
Okay, so anything more, Tara, Nadine? You want to report out, Carl? You want to report out of community outreach? Anything I've missed?
No, only because I may have beaten a topic that I'm particularly annoyed, I guess, about. I may have beaten it to death at the last meeting, and you pointed that out to me. So rather than incur your wrath or semi-wrath again, I'll just keep quiet.
Appreciate it, Carl. All right, we can take it up again at another time. So all right, so we're gonna have a September meeting, and Amanda will be sending around a doodle poll. It's obviously a very important meeting, so please make every effort to attend. Very important that we have as full attendance as possible at that September meeting. So before I open it up for public comments, is there anything I haven't covered that people have questions about? Okay. So I'm gonna open it up for public comments. Jake, I haven't missed anything, right?
No, I think you have everything that we had on the agenda today. Yep.
Okay. So, any public comments? Sharon,
Just promoted Sharon.
Hello, can you hear me?
yes, hi Sharon.
Okay, hi. Just one comment. In explaining to the various towns what their increases are, I would appreciate a little background so that people just don't see like, oh, it's up or down, and I'm obviously gonna vote, against it if it's up. It seems that in my talk in the community, a lot of people don't understand why, their costs might go up. And one of the factors that I've said, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but the policies of Mass DESI on school choice, if it's a lot of incoming or outgoing, for the small towns, is basically supplemented by the big towns, Sheffield and Great Barrington. And that's not the only reason, but that's a major reason. And so if they understand that there's been a sort of undercharging, and that this reorganization, the consolidation will help to even out the distribution of costs, and it is being done over a long period of time, people might feel like they understand it better, that they're not just being fools voting on something that's going to increase their costs. I try to explain to people that I think without the soft landing, or whatever you want to call it, Great Barrington's distribution allocation would be minus 15%. And because there is this, soft landing concept there, and Sheffield too, they are sort of sacrificing the severity of the reduction by helping the increase to be lessened in the many other towns. I hope I have this right, but is there any part of the presentations that will explain some of these things?
Jake, you want to respond?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure I understand what you're
Good luck.
asking.
George, how about people not speaking without being recognized by the chair? Okay, go ahead, Jake.
No, I'm gonna say I'm not sure I completely understand what you're getting at, Sharon. So I don't know. Just walk me through it again, and I'll see.
I think I understand what she's saying. So first, Sharon, when you see the breakout by town, you'll see that overall, this merger is not going to result in increases. It's going to result in savings, right? And we've seen those graphs before, like merger versus non-merger. When you look at the districts and you consider all factors, the groups as a whole do better with merger financially than without. And we were just in Egremont this morning, and in Egremont, we illustrated that in 2026 and 2028 and 2030, even factoring in the very modest contribution to the new high school, Egremont actually does a lot better in those years with the merger than without the merger. So I think the premise of the question, that there are going to be increases in all of the 5 towns as a result of the merger, at least in initial years, is not entirely accurate. But I think what you're getting at is that there is a reason that we decided on the safety valve, right? So that we decided on this smoother that would operate in the initial years of the merger, and that is that there's some disparity in what the towns in Berkshire Hills are paying per student as compared to the towns in Southern Berkshire, what they're paying per student. And part of that, and this is what Sharon's getting at, Jake, I think, in terms of context, part of that is tied to school choice, or at least that's the perception. So that's her question. Are we going to be speaking to that issue?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't really focused a lot in terms of, we did quite a bit of work on school choice in our reports. I was asked recently about school choice specifically. And one of the reasons we haven't made a big focus on school choice, Sharon, is that we've been really not trying to set this up as a competitive exercise between the towns or between the districts, right? To say, oh, your kids are going this direction and not going the other direction. But you know, I was asked recently, you know, what percentage of kids in Egremont go to Berkshire Hills? That was a question that folks asked because, you know, we're projecting also the potential ramifications of Berkshire Hills building this high school alone, and then students choicing in or tuitioning in to Monument on vocational tuition. And so the question around how many kids are already going to Monument is a valid one, right? And so I don't have it really a part of our presentation or materials right now in terms of what we're highlighting. Choice is not one of those items, with the exception of the CBTE question, which is highlighted, because when we do the merger versus no merger, when we look at the cost of what the 5 Southern Berkshire towns will be contributing at 10% minus the 6% incentive versus potential vocational tuition, it's, you know, our projections say it's cheaper for them to be part of the capital project. And we show that on a grid for those 5 towns and on these 2-page briefs. What I'm not showing is an illustration of choice as it currently exists in the 8 towns. I think Ken Rock, somewhere around 1.5 years, 2 years ago, said that to me in a meeting. He said, there's already an incredible amount of movement around these 8 towns. Families are deciding to go to one or the other district. It's already happening, whether this merger occurs or not. But it's not something we've been really highlighting. The other part too, I know you've talked about, Sharon, is the tuition with towns outside of the 8 towns. And, you know, we've really encouraged this. I would encourage the transitional school committee to be looking at that carefully in terms of what are the tuition rates if the merger were to occur, how much space is available, and are those tuition rates closer to market value of what you actually pay to educate the kids. So that's another recommendation we made in the report originally when we were talking about the significant amount of movement that occurs in all of South County with students. I'm probably not answering your question. I'm rambling a little bit, but in terms of talking specifically to the public about it, the only topic we're really talking about in terms of student movement is going to be related to Chapter 74 programs at the moment.
Okay, can I
Sure.
respond?
Go ahead,
Lucy?
Sharon, yeah.
Well, I know your emphasis has been CVTE, but people then challenge, well, you're just guessing at how many people might be going and so forth. Well, that's one part of it, but and I think it's a good argument, even though there are retorts. But the second part of it, you know, the early charts show that there's a lot more choice into Berkshire Hills than Southern Berkshires. So, you know, it's something we don't talk about. And people think, some people in the small towns think, why can't we just continue the way we are? We just choice into, you know, the school we want to. And if it's going to be the new high school, why do we have to merge? And I think that has to be addressed. The school that would be built if the merger were not to happen is a much smaller school. I'm one of the people that protested building a 700-person high school 10 years ago was ridiculous, because I did a lot of the statistical analysis as well. And there was not a need for 700 students. So the introduction of the possibility of building a much smaller high school reduces the possibility that anybody who wants to choice in will be able to choice in like before. And I think that has to be addressed in a more realistic way. Anyway, that's, you know, my opinion. And there was another, but enough said. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. Any other public comments?
Yeah, someone had their hand up. Nancy did, I think.
Eileen had a hand up and I tried
Eileen, too.
promoting, but then the hand went away, so I'm unsure. Oh, she's back. Eileen, there should just be an option to accept being promoted.
Sorry, I had a cat blocking that particular spot. I answered my own question, so my hand is actually down.
Okay,
Sorry about that.
that's okay. Thank you, Eileen. Okay, I don't see any more hands, so we're gonna do something I don't think we've ever done before, which is adjourn 40 minutes early.
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah.
I second.
Okay. Hearing no objection, the meeting is adjourned at 6:50 p.m. Thank you, everyone.